everyone, welcome to the Human Skills Lab, because human skills aren't soft, they're essential. I'm Heidi Peace, an educator, and I'm so excited to be here with you.
And I'm Kobe Campbell, a school counselor and a licensed clinical social worker. We're teaming up to encourage you and equip you to build the skills for a better life. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed or just looking for a little bit of motivation, you're in the right place. Although we come from an education background, this podcast is intended for everyone.
In every episode, we'll share practical tips, personal stories, and strategies you can use. Plus, we'll answer your questions, maybe even have some fun along the way.
So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's figure this out together. We're so glad you're here.
This podcast is for informational purposes and does not constitute professional advice. Also, our views are our own and do not reflect the views of the school district for which we work. So today, let's jump into last week was all about complaining, and we made some tiny goals for ourselves. What was your tiniest next step for complaining?
My tiniest next step was to ask the person what they needed. And I don't think I ran into too many people complaining this week, which, hallelujah. So I think the majority of the people who complain in my personal life, right, that I have contact with are my family. And I think we are, we're doing okay. We didn't really have a lot of complaints this week. I think one thing I noticed for myself is when I started complaining to myself, I thought, what do I need? So aside from that, I used a little bit of flexibility and thought, what do I need when I start complaining to myself? I wasn't complaining to anybody else, but I was feeling particularly overloaded in one area. And I thought, well, duh, ask for help. Instead of do all of this complaining and emotional overlay, you can just ask for help. So I did.
I mean,
and it worked out.
that's
So,
that's a breakthrough. I know you're like, oh, well, it occurred to me, I can just do that. But
right.
there are a lot of times where we don't, because we think we should martyr ourselves, or
Yeah.
we think we should be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do everything? That's not helpful.
Nope. It's not helpful for anybody, because
No.
if you find yourself doing everything, you're going to feel overloaded and overwhelmed and end up getting irritable and complaining to yourself or other people.
Right.
And it's going to affect your relationships. So,
I think that's gold, and I
yeah.
think that I'm going to keep on with that for the next week. My goal was to give myself permission to just listen and not have to solve everybody's problems.
Yeah.
So I'd say I still have some guilt when I don't make other people's problems go away. So I'm still working on that part.
Yeah.
Even though it's their problem. So I have a little bit more internal work to do on that. But I do think that it made a big difference, and I was able to say no to some things
Yeah.
and just listen to other things, and listen with the intent to just hold space for somebody instead of springing into fixing mode or
See, I love that.
super mom mode. I don't know.
I love that, because I think so many of us do feel like we are responsible for fixing other people's problems, and we are just not. I mean, yes, we can help, and there are some relationships in which we need to help more than others for a variety of reasons, but it is so easy to jump into fix-it mode, to jump into or to take on the responsibility of fixing other people's problems when maybe that's not what they need, and maybe it's definitely not what we need in the moment,
And it assumes that we're all knowing, that we know what somebody else needs. And maybe we do, and maybe we don't.
Yeah.
And either way, people are on their own timeline, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. I think, yeah, whether we like it or not. And I think sometimes we expect that people want us to solve their problems, so we jump in, and sometimes we just jump in because that's the pattern that we have developed. Maybe that's been expected from us in the past, or in our role as moms or teachers or counselors or whatever role we inhabit, that expectation has become ingrained. And so that self-awareness that, oh, that's a pattern that maybe doesn't serve me in this situation, maybe doesn't even serve them in this situation. Whose expectation is this? right? And can
Right.
I jettison it and move on?
Right. Well, I think we've each had some, I don't know, even though it was a tiny step, I think there were a giant leap forward.
That's where your giant leaps start, is that tiny step. Without that tiny step, how can you, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I
but
think
yes, I
that
do
it's
agree.
one step forward for our relationships and also our own health. And I
Mm,
think it connects back to our wellness wheel. And when I think about keeping myself healthy and well, I'm also less likely to get caught up in
hmm.
feelings of resentment or guilt or other things because I have a bigger picture in my perspective.
And I think that segues nicely to our topic today, because what you're talking about, that guilt, resentment, and all of that, is a type of emotional clutter. And so today we're talking about purging junk to make room for life, right? Getting rid of all kinds of clutter to really be able to live our best lives and to make room for those things that really are important to us in our lives. So that's our topic today, the purging physical, emotional, and cognitive junk to make more room for our lives.
So I think the first important point is why should we tackle purging junk?
Mhm.
Um, and I think first it comes to an awareness. Do we have unlimited space in our home? No.
Nope.
Do we have unlimited space on what we can focus on in our brain?
Nope.
No. Do we have an unlimited time on this earth? No. And I think once you kind of come to that harsh truth,
Mhm.
then we can act. So I think we want to start with instead of starting with like, oh, this is a negative thing. This is a deficit model. We don't have enough of these things. But instead of, well, we do have a limited amount. Accept that as truth. Now, what do we want to fill it with?
Mhm.
What are what can we do to make sure that our choices are intentional and that we are filling our life with peace and ease instead of stuff and junk.
Which points to starting from a lens of motivation for positive things in your life versus shame that I have so much stuff and it's all over the place. I think there's a big difference in how much resistance you're going to feel in decluttering or purging things if you start from the lens of feeling motivated to create a life that you love versus a lens of shame that here is where I am with all of these things that are cluttering up my home and cluttering up my brain and cluttering up my life. It makes a huge difference.
And I think if we're talking about shame too, I think it's easy like the older you are to go, "Oh, I'm this many years old and I haven't done this yet. It's,
Hmm.
that's my fault. I'm not good enough. You could
Or I've
get,
allowed this to happen. I've allowed
yes,
myself to
yes,
get to this place where there's so much clutter or whatever.
exactly. So I think the point is to not get stuck in that and just to accept this is how much time we want to live in peace with ease, or this is the time we want to live with junk around us and start from that as zero,
Yeah.
not start at that as, oh, I should have done this 10 years ago, 15 years
Hmm.
ago, and feeling bad about it. Like, save yourself the hassle. Just
Yeah.
start
What's that
fresh.
saying? The best time to have started was 20 years ago, and the second best time to start is now, or I don't
Yeah, right.
probably
Yes,
butchered that. But point being, it's an acceptance of and grace for, yeah, I didn't do it then, but I have an opportunity now,
right.
and to make things better moving forward.
All right. So I think our stuff comes in different categories. It comes in physical and cognitive and emotional. So
Yeah.
we're going to go over all three of those
Hmm.
to show what are the benefits of starting with intentionality,
Hmm.
purging out, cleaning out, and using some of our tiny moves to make big change. So, what do you when we talk about clutter,
Hmm.
whether it's visual clutter in your space or
Hmm.
cognitive clutter in your mind, it can create chaos, which
Yes.
makes it hard for us to focus. So, clutter is visual distraction, it's also cognitive overload. Unorganized spaces reduce our working memory.
Hmm.
Research shows that people are less less irritable when we have less clutter and less distraction, less distracted, more productive, better at processing information when the physical environment is clean and clear.
Right.
So, if since we start with that bit of knowledge, what are some mental health benefits? We already know our cognitive benefits, but what are some mental health benefits now?
Right. So when we're thinking about why we should tackle purging our junk, so the first that you just described is that cognitive space that it creates for us so that we can function better. We are more functional when we have less cluttered spaces because of all of those things that you talked about. We're less irritable, distracted, more productive. We can process information because that cognitive overload isn't there from all of the things. And the thought that we should have or should do something with all of these things, that responsibility for the stuff, right? So, mental health benefits, the second category of why we should do this is mental health benefits. So, multiple studies connect clutter to anxiety, depression, and stress. If you think about, that responsibility that we feel and that cognitive space that takes up, that can be really easy for it to become overwhelming for us and cause stress, anxiety, and depression. So messy environments trigger frustration, overwhelm, and helplessness. I don't know if you've ever right now. We moved into our house a month ago, and so we've been unpacking boxes and setting up spaces. And the layout of this home is very different than the layout of our other home, and we lived there for 22 years. So we had a space for all of the things, and we knew where everything went, and everything fit in the, you know. And here it's like, oh, so there are still boxes in our entryway, and like this was a personal thing for me this week because I walk in after work, a long day of work, and there's clutter. And it's not that it's unwanted or unneeded things, it's that it doesn't have a home yet because we work full time. Daughter goes to school full time. So we don't have all day every day to do the things we need to do, to unclutter, declutter, put stuff away. So we do it one thing at a time, which we will talk about a little bit later today. But when you clear your space, you clear that mental noise, you create peace and ease in your home, which then translates into less stress, less anxiety, and less depression.
It feels a little bit like the circle of control too. Like you
Hmm.
may not be able to control stress at work or stress with health of a family member or stress with a friendship, but you can control
Hmm.
how much is out in your physical environment, either
Yes.
maybe on your desk at work or maybe at your home.
Yeah.
So, like, it's doing something that you can control gives you a little traction and also a little reprieve.
Yeah. And especially if you have a tendency towards anxiety and depression like that, if that will tip you over sort of the edge to, because of that feeling of overwhelm, and that when you do something to create a little more space, peace, ease in your environment, that does tip the scales back.
So, we want to clear the space and clear the mental noise.
Hmm.
All right, so now we've figured out we do want more ease, we do want more peace. Um, how do we get there? Like, so is it about the number of things we own? Is it about having them all in the right places? What can we do?
So I think that can be variable. That's going to be variable based on your situation, your personality, your home. And so the thing that we know is that the more things we own, the more we need to clean, manage, keep track of, maintain, the more physical and mental and time energy it takes. So when you clear physical clutter and you have things that you need, love, use, and yes, that doesn't mean you can't have decorative things or things that are, used only occasionally, or loved things that are passed down. It's not that you can't have them if you have the space for them. But when we clear physical clutter, we have more energy and time for other things because we're not spending it taking care of all of our items or, material possessions. Um,
So
and
when
that
we
feels
when we clear the physical clutter, we can create more energy, easier days, a greater sense of calm, and
Yes.
honestly, a little bit less work for ourselves because
A
we are
little bit
not
less.
managing ourselves, we're not tracking things, and we're not maintaining things. I
Exactly.
I always remember my dad would refuse to buy the cars that had the window that was automatic. He's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
it's just something that's going to break.
Yeah, more.
It's more to
Okay.
go wrong."
May or may not have bought my last refrigerator based on that principle as well, and washer dryer. Like I, I understand. The more complicated it is, the more things can go wrong, the more expensive it is to fix, right? But
Exactly.
personal preference. And then the last reason that it is good, not the last reason, but another reason, and the last one we'll talk about today, that it's good to purge our stuff is that progress equals motivation.
Mm.
And not just for decluttering. It's what you talked about before when we declutter a bit that gives us more of a sense of control and accomplishment, which then we can build on for other things that we need or want to do. So small wins create momentum. When we complete something, we get that little dopamine hit, right? That gives us a desire to keep going. And it might be to keep going on the decluttering, or it might be to pick up that guitar that we haven't learned
Mm.
how to play yet and we've wanted to. It can be something else that we want to do. And then it becomes a transferable skill for other areas of your life. If I can do this here, I can do that over there too. If I can declutter here and really have the self discipline to get through this, I can apply that self discipline or that whatever skill that I use, that um, doing the inner work to look at, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. If I can do the inner work to look at why I kept this sentimental item, I can do the inner work over here in this difficult situation. So it becomes a transferable skill.
And I want to call back a little bit to our Eisenhower matrix and
Hmm.
how clutter can be something that is important, but doesn't have to be something that is urgent. So sometimes it can get overlooked as, and so it's almost like you're putting it off because it's not the fire in the dumpster right now.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that is screaming at you, it's just whispering at you.
But every time you go to find a thing and you have to move 50 other things to find the thing, you go, oh, I really should do something about this.
Right.
And then time passes and you don't do the thing because it's not the fire.
Right, because it's not the fire. And so maybe thinking about this a little differently and thinking, hey, if I can set, was we're going to find our tiniest next steps. Maybe if I set a timer for 10 minutes right
Hmm.
now and I just go through and see what empty boxes I can find to throw away.
Hmm.
What things that are not in the right spot that I can move in 10 minutes. And when that timer goes off, you can feel that sense of momentum you were talking about from seeing a little bit of progress and seeing something that has been put off for a long time
Hmm.
and that was whispering and now it's gone. And
Yeah.
it makes you feel lighter. It makes you
I did that
feel,
just yesterday.
yeah,
Like,
it makes you feel like you have more energy. Like
yeah,
some of your emotional energy was caught up with that thing
yeah.
on your list.
Which brings us to emotional readiness for the task. If you're going to declutter or purge, uh, looking at your emotional readiness to do so. And one of the reasons why I wanted to look at this is because we're not going to tell you anything earth shattering that you haven't heard before about how to declutter. I mean, Marie Kondo can do that. There are all kinds of the Swedish death cleaning method. Like there are all kinds of different methods for decluttering, but I had a particular interest in what gets in the way of us decluttering. Like we sit here with all of this stuff and we don't declutter. Why? Why don't we do that? So when we're looking at emotional readiness, I think we have to normalize the emotional side of decluttering, the feeling bad that we let it get this far, the emotional attachment to the things, the shame or guilt that we can feel, the all of the things that go along with um, that, and maybe even drive that feeling of, oh, I know I need to declutter, but I really don't want to. I'm overwhelmed. I
So
don't.
overwhelming.
Yeah,
It's too big, it's too
yeah,
much, it's too heavy.
yeah. So if you do feel resistance, ask yourself, Why am I having such a hard time getting rid of this or getting started with this? What emotion is tied to this? And is this about now? Or is this about something from the past? Is this a thought, perception, belief that you have, that you've developed um, from a past situation? Whether it's about, I'll give an example of people in our parents' generation, maybe growing up during the Depression era, and that may have shaped how they deal with things, right? They may overbuy things for fear of not having enough, or they may save tiny soap slivers, or, things save like remnants because, oh, but they can be useful. That's sort of an example of um, that. Is this now or is this somewhere? You have plenty of resources, yet you're saving tiny scraps. Now, there are lots of other reasons for saving tiny scraps, ecological or environmental stewardship,
Awareness. Yeah.
etc. Yeah. But when we dive into the inner work about is this about now or is this about something else? Or is there a message you received about yourself surrounding stuff
Hmm.
from before, whether it's a parental, you've got too many stuffed animals, or, that may or may not have happened in my child's life. Um,
Hmm.
so, the messages we receive about ourselves surrounding stuff may be operating now. Whether we were told we had too much stuff or, whatever messages about the things that we own or have. Um, so that's, if you feel resistance, you can stop and ask that. Um,
And take it with a little bit of, I guess, awareness that when the TV shows come in and they go and help you clean out everything, they have teams of people, and still it's hard. It's still hard because it's so much stuff or it's so sentimental, that it can be an overwhelming task,
mhm.
and it can feel tedious and boring. And you may not know how to start. You may not know the best place. Emotional energy can also be tied up in other stressors in your
Mhm.
life that are distracting you slash stealing your resources away from this task.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a prime example, you get home from work and there's clutter and you need to do something about it. May or may not be living that right now. And you, your your mental and emotional energy and your physical energy have been elsewhere obligated, and so it can be difficult um, to start. You said the best place to start, and I wanted to come back to that. There is no best place to start.
Hmm.
So
Start with 10 minutes. That's the
start
best place to
anywhere.
start.
Yeah,
And
start
start
anywhere.
anywhere.
Um, so all of that to say, if you're feeling resistance, there's a reason why, and we will always come back to that inner work, looking at that resistance, asking yourself some questions.
There are three main types of junk we carry: physical junk, mental junk, and emotional junk. So, with physical junk, these are items that are materials. They're something we can see, they're tangible, but sometimes those come with sentimental ties. So, I'm going to use an example of like grandma's china that was
Mhm.
gifted to you at your wedding that's now supposed to be passed on to your children and grandchildren, but you don't really like the china, or it can't go in the microwave, so you never use it. So, those material items can have a double edged sword
Mm,
attached to them. It can be like, yes, it's a physical thing taking up space in my house, and my relationship with grandma would be greatly impacted if I
yeah.
let go of this china. So there might actually need to be some conversations,
Hmm.
or at least with yourself, say, hey, look, it's in my house right now, it's mine. I have the control of what I do with this item.
Yeah.
And if I'm not using it, what what would be better? Somebody else using it? Maybe I can
Hmm.
donate it or sell it to somebody who would use it more than me. or it just collects dust here. So I think that these material items can also be highly charged emotionally, and I think that that is a sticking point for us in our I guess in our charge to get rid of things.
Yeah, I think that that's an important distinction to make is that all of our physical items, um, there can be emotional clutter attached to our physical items, the expectations of others, the the feelings that come up around these. And I want to address also cultural expectations, cultural and familial expectations that may be really difficult to navigate if you are deciding that you don't want to keep this item. So give yourself grace here because there's a lot of nuance and trickiness to those cultural and familial expectations, right? It's not as easy as just, nope, it's
No,
not my style, let's chuck it or give it to somebody in need. It comes with a lot more emotional baggage. So,
it's complicated.
yeah, and I think we'll get into this in the tips too, but I think starting with the smaller, less sentimental things is a great idea because if you dive right into the deep end with those things that you're expected familially or culturally to hang on to, that can stop you in your tracks and you won't get anywhere. I mean, it can shut down your will to do any of the decluttering. So starting small is always a good idea.
And I think the next thing in our path to get rid of that physical clutter
Hmm.
is to really come to terms with where we are in our life. What is our age? What is our role? What is our need? And make sure we're not living in the past.
Yeah.
Making sure we're not being like, well, I might wear that mini skirt from my teenage years again. Nope, not going to happen. So I'm going to let that one go.
Sorry. That one more into the
And
snort.
also,
Thank you
because
for
that
that.
is a call back to the past, but also to an aspirational self that's not going
Yeah.
to be there.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind, the miniskirt, thank you for that laugh. But the thing that comes to mind for me a lot with that, anchor us to a past identity, a sport or something that we used to do, clothing that we no longer fit in, you know, things that we've hung on to because we wish we were that person from the past, but also aspirational clutter, people we wish we were. Um, you know, it goes both ways, and that it just serves to again fuel that you know those mental health issues that we talked about, that depression, anxiety, and stress, and it's a hit on your self-esteem too. Like let's accept where we are, and if we want to be in a different place, let's create a reasonable plan. Maybe all of these things that we have don't aren't needed. Maybe that's not really who we want to be, or we would have used them, you know. So, another type of junk is emotional junk. Some of this unearned guilt or shame we carry around from expectations that other people, and again, this emotional junk can also be tied to, and usually is tied to some of our physical clutter too. So, unearned guilt or shame that we're feeling because we have been programmed in a certain way, those expectations, those beliefs, perceptions of ourselves that have come through all of the messages we received from schooling, from parents, from family, from friends, well meaning. They did not mean to harm us in many cases. In some cases, again, there's always a chance for me to give my note about professional help. So I'm going to do it now. If there has been trauma in your life and that guilt or shame is excessive and is really hampering your functioning, especially, I mean, when we go to declutter stuff, a lot of this can come up. I mean, that's why they have the TV shows, right? Where professionals come in and help them untangle that sometimes. Um, Seek professional help when that trauma is coming up, when all of those patterns are really weighing heavy. Excessive worry, fear, and anxiety, untangling all of that, doing the inner work to really look at what is operating, what belief system is operating to keep you functioning in this worry, fear, and anxiety, what thoughts might be driving, perceptions might be driving it. avoiding tasks can be emotional junk, as emotional protection, like busyness, right? Putting our energy towards these things that are clutter, or being overly busy, overproducing as a way to keep us from having to really look at those hard feelings or do those hard tasks. Oh, I'm too busy to do that over there that we feel resistance to because I've got to take care of all of this stuff over here that I have. I got to, manage all of the things that we talked about before, all of those physical items that take up our energy and things.
That reminds me of a classic study that people would rather feel pain than be bored. So I think
Mm,
sometimes keeping that clutter around us keeps us from having that moment of, oh, now what?
yeah, I mean, it sort of brings to mind dysfunctional patterns. A lot of times we're comfortable with our dysfunction, even if it's painful. We're comfortable with our patterns of behavior, even if it's painful. Um, and the unknown, like making that change and changing that pattern might be uncomfortable, at least initially. Maybe long term,
Because
usually.
it doesn't feel familiar. It doesn't feel like it did when you were younger.
Hmm.
And so acknowledging that yeah, it's not the same. And
Hmm.
and knowing when to get professional help.
Yeah.
When is it just something you can kind of talk yourself through, and when
Hmm.
is it not?
Yeah, and that's a personal thing, that's an individual thing, but like a hallmark that I always use is if it's interfering with your functioning,
Hmm.
if it's keeping you from functioning in the way that you want and need to do, it's worth taking a look at with someone else. And then the another area, the last one that we'll cover today is thought junk. So like thought loops that keep us stuck. Automatic negative thoughts or cognitive distortions, catastrophizing, all or nothing thinking. There are lots of different thought loops or cognitive distortions that can keep us from being able to or cause resistance to getting rid of stuff or doing this whole process, or narratives that aren't true anymore
Hmm.
about ourselves. um, so the thought junk, kind of like the emotional junk, comes up a lot when we try to declutter sometimes. So if you find yourself in any of those sort of thought patterns, there's a lot of information on the internet about those cognitive distortions. There are, I think, 11 different types of cognitive distortions that you can fall into. I think it's not a topic for today. We don't have time to go through all of them, but if you do find yourself in negative thought loops, it's pretty easy to kind of identify that you're in a negative thought loop just by how you're feeling in your body and like your motivation level and all of that. I think, yeah, it's pretty easily identified when you're in a negative sort of headspace or thought loop.
Okay, so we have those three main types.
Hmm.
What do we do now? So for physical clutter, we want to break those tasks into the smallest first step we can do. One pile, one drawer, one corner, one 10-minute timer.
Hmm.
However works for you, start small. Um, and then if it's sentimental, another thing we could do is we can take pictures of some
Hmm.
things. Now, this is something that we really didn't have as much access to, decades ago, as we didn't have digital photography in the
Yeah.
same way that we do now, and at our phone access, like in our hand, portable, with us anytime. So we should leverage some of those new technologies that we have access to that weren't possible before. And then ask us, do we need the piece of paper if we have a digital image?
Yeah.
Because that digital image is going to be more protected than that piece of paper over a long period of time.
Hmm.
One thing I was just really struck with too is we have been evacuated for fires 4 times so far and counting. And I think about what are those sentimental things that I really couldn't live without. And though I'm not ready to get rid of some of those pieces of paper, I definitely am taking pictures of them
Hmm.
so that those really special things I can have. Because
Yeah.
if you really do need to evacuate, you don't have time to pick and choose and go through all that clutter in an
Yeah.
hour. And there's like,
Yeah.
you need to get out of your house, you get your dog and you go, you know?
Yeah, in this process, as you were talking, before you mentioned that, that was something that occurred to me, is it's always good if you have the bandwidth to do this, even if you don't, maybe setting an appointment with yourself that there are things that I want to be sure that I capture. Even if you're going to keep them, it's not a bad idea to do that digital capture so that if something does happen for whatever reason, it decreases the devastation, you know?
Right. And it's funny what, if you look back, do you regret throwing away things in the past? And I'm trying to think of things that I've thrown away that I've been really upset about, and like, not really much pops up. So
No.
that gives me a little bit of motivation to then purge some things that are sentimental,
Yeah.
especially if I have a digital copy. It's like, why not? I could always print it out again. We have access to these technologies that are really low cost. It's just a lot of time to put them in, but
Yeah.
even that, there are services that will do that for you too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's so if you have something sentimental, consider a new technology that might help you protect that while not having to keep the material item.
Yeah.
And then if you have an item that is unused, move it. See if you can use it. I just recently went through my closet and I was like, ooh, I haven't worn this shirt in a long time. And so I moved it to a new spot. And I have two outcomes, right? I actually wore that particular shirt, but there might be another outcome. You don't wear it. But now
Mm-hmm.
you're aware that you
Yeah.
are not wearing it and that maybe it should go to somebody who will use it before it just kind of falls apart on its own. Because
Yeah.
there is a shelf life on everything, really. We
Yeah.
want we want to
Preparing.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just preparing to move. You know, when you've lived somewhere for a long time and then you pull everything out and you're trying to pack it up, it's like, oh, I forgot I had that, right? And so when you do move it to a new place, it raises your awareness that it exists, and you're either more likely to wear it or more likely to, or use it, or more likely to realize you're not going to wear or use it and get rid of it. So,
And focus on the progress, not the perfection. Like if you
mhm.
move that item to a test spot and it just sits there for a while, don't let that add to your shame, you know.
Yeah.
It is because we don't want to throw away money, right? We don't want to throw away something we're going to have to buy again, but also we want to use all of the minutes of our life in the best way that we can. And part of that is use as how we use our home, how we
Hmm.
use our workspace, whether or not it slows us down from being productive and happy and clear minded.
Hmm.
So focus on the progress. We don't need to be perfect.
No, and I'm gonna tag on to that too about the shame, and the throwing away money. Some of the most freeing things that I have given away are things that I bought and didn't use and may have even still had the tags on, and that is rife for feeling shame about and guilt about. And it's been so freeing to say, look at this new thing that somebody else is really going to be so excited to get because it is brand new, never been used, and let it go. It's so freeing to let go of the thing you didn't use and then do better next time, right? Like, consider more intentionally next time. You always have that fresh start, you know?
Yeah, that's really great advice because that will help you when you're selecting new items to
Yeah.
bring home.
Mm-hmm.
So consider and evaluate the purpose of the emotional items. You can thank items, many different systems like Marie Kondo do
Mm-hmm.
this. Um, I think it's just like a good mindfulness practice too, to be mindful of what you're doing and to be thankful for the purpose that it has given you over the years and
Mm-hmm.
how you've used it. And then ask yourself, does it still serve a purpose? Can it serve a different or better purpose? Or do I need to pass this on to somebody else who could use it better than I can? Another strategy is to incorporate the use of an accountability partner.
Mm-hmm.
Have a buddy,
Yeah.
and your buddy can be in your family. Your buddy can be a friend. Just have a buddy that is hopefully less sentimental than you are, and even just somebody who's the kind of the same level. as you, but
Hmm.
does not have that sentiment towards your items, will really help act as like a neutral, a Switzerland. He'll have a he'll have a Switzerland come to your rescue to really help you evaluate.
Yeah. And to
I
ask.
really go on the more sentimental side, so I really prefer those people who are just no nonsense about it. Like that really helps me
Yeah.
to make a better choice and then to move forward.
Yeah. And, within all of these, pacing yourself and checking what you need at each moment. I think that um, with the gratitude ritual, what comes to mind again is the clothing. Gratitude for the experiences I had in the fun. A lot of times it's a younger, more fun, less burdened self, less responsible self, right? Um, and
Oh, yeah.
so, yeah, like these were great
Hmm.
times, and that's not who I am anymore. So, maybe you can give it to your kid, right? Who fits that, whatever, vintage clothing, right? From mom's
Right.
closet. Um, or somebody else who's going to be super stoked to get it. But pace yourself, check in with what you need, and it's not avoidance if you need to take a break, but be sure it's not avoidance if you need to take a break. So definitely take a break when it becomes emotionally heavy or physically you're tired. I mean, this isn't, easy work physically either, depending on what you're decluttering. Um, so pace yourself, take breaks when you need it, and check in with your support system if you are feeling emotionally heavy.
And I guess we can summarize this as those sentimental attachments are invisible poles.
Hmm.
And what we can do is we can make them visible. We can
Yeah.
say, hey, look, I'm not in that same situation anymore. Or, you know, this family member, I love this family member and this family member gave it to me. But if you come to that awareness and make it more visible, I think you can really make peace with it. You can
And
you can be honest.
if that's all you do and you keep the item, that's still progress.
Yeah.
So progress isn't getting rid of stuff. Yeah, it can look like that. But progress is also making the invisible visible. So you're aware of what you're working with. And if you're not able to do the inner work or get rid of the thing yet, that is still progress because you are now understanding the situation and you can give yourself grace for at another time. I will work through this. Not able to right now. I don't feel, like that's the bandwidth that I have, but I have made this visible. I am aware. So, for emotional clutter and attachment to your clutter, name the feeling. Name it to tame it is a really well known strategy. It can help decrease the intensity of the feeling. And then ask if it belongs to you or someone else, like the expectation about the item, the feeling about the item, whatever you're feeling. Is this mine to carry or is this somebody else's emotional baggage? Are you taking on their expectations like grandma's china?
Hmm.
You know, again, there are cultural and familial expectations that you may not feel ready to navigate just yet, but that awareness is the first step. Um, and asking if it belongs to you. Does this emotional baggage about this physical thing, or just this emotional clutter in general, belong to me or somebody else? Um, when you're talking about physical clutter but emotional attachment, break things down into 2-minute wins. If there is a teeny thing in this little section of emotional attachment items that you can say, yeah, I'm okay. I'd spend 2 minutes taking a look. If there's one thing that you can say, yeah, I'm okay letting go of, that's a win, right? Or if you look through it and you're aware of the thing, that's a win. But the point being, if you start small and have a small win, that builds motivation and feeling of success. And then sit with discomfort. This is similar to pacing yourself from the last one. Sit with discomfort in small doses. Know your limits. And when it becomes uncomfortable, um, evaluate, am I avoiding? Can I do this for a little bit longer? Because we don't want to cut and run just at the first sign of discomfort. However, if it is too uncomfortable, do it in small doses, right? It builds your capacity and your resilience, your capability of handling discomfort. Just like anything else, when we practice managing, like being uncomfortable and managing it, we get better at it. That's part of resilience.
And what about for thought clutter? So we know that it's not as easy as
No.
just the material item.
Hmm.
That there's emotional clutter, there's emotional attachment, there's burdens placed onto you by other people that says you need to be the caretaker, the steward of this item. But
Hmm.
then we also have our thoughts.
Yeah.
So, what strategies do we have for our thought clutter?
So I feel like the thing that the method that I use or the strategy that I use with kids and anybody who wants to talk to me about thought clutter, really, kids, adults, whoever, is catch, check, and change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so catching that thought loop, that cognitive distortion, that just thought, I should keep this. Catching that thought. When we have that feeling, catch the thought. Check the thought. Is that true? Really true? I'm going to go back to Byron Katie's work for this too. She has some really thought provoking ways of thinking about if something is really true because we can feel that it's true, but when we dive down into it, is it really true or is that our thought, perception, belief that is driving this that maybe it's true, maybe it's not? Um, so we want to catch it, we want to check it, evaluate it, look for evidence for it and against it, and then change it, replace it with something that. So when we're talking about negative thoughts, a lot of times people say positive thinking, and I'm not a huge fan of positive thinking. I'm a fan of more helpful thinking because positive thinking, when we think of positive thinking, the idea is that we have to be happy all the time. And no, we don't. We're not going to be. That's not life. It's not healthy. But more helpful thought is something that decreases the intensity of the negativity and moves us up to the next step. That may shift us into a neutral mindset or may shift us into a slightly positive mindset, but it's not an everything is awesome mindset because it's not. This is hard, but it's something that gives us something more helpful to work from. It decreases, it pulls us out of the pit a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we're replacing whatever narrative or thought that we have in our head with something true and either more neutral or more helpful. Um, and one way that we can do that is by journaling or voice noting or whatever, to work through some of the thoughts that we have. It's difficult sometimes to identify a thought. I feel incensed. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I feel shamed. But it's hard sometimes to isolate the thought that can be causing that. But often they have a lot to do with shoulds in this particular case, right?
Yes.
I should or shouldn't do this, have this, be this, whatever. So if we can identify the thought, check it, and then change it to something that's more helpful for us, either by journaling or just by sitting in stillness and processing. For a lot of us, that's hard. We're busy, and that's pointing back to what I was talking about before, busyness as avoidance,
Right.
right? That's hard to think about. What am I doing to prolong my pain and suffering? What am I doing to create this resistance?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. But if you sit in stillness and allow your mind to wander, you might just find some things out.
Yeah. Busyness is a tricky thing
Yeah.
because a lot of it we don't have control over it, but some of it
Hmm.
we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And
we fill
especially,
that time up with things that is not serving us.
yeah, I have to do this. Do you really? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have got to do this thing, that's preventing me from doing this thing over it. But do you?
Right.
You, like, whose expectations are you operating around? Or what dynamic is going on here? Especially for some of us overproducers, that's the way that we feel good about
Right.
ourselves, even if it's not absolutely necessary, right?
Yeah.
And it may be keeping us from that stillness that can really get to the root of why some of this is going on. So,
Okay. So sometimes it's trickier than you anticipate.
mhm,
It's more complicated. There are cultural influences, there are relationship influences. I think the most important thing is that we give ourselves grace. We go in small steps, we pace ourselves. None of this is about perfection. It's about making space. Treat yourself with kindness. I think of like, how would I want my friend to treat me, and how would I
Hmm.
treat my friend? Because sometimes I'm a bit harder on myself, or a lot harder on myself than I am on others. So treat yourself kindly and with grace, and slow progress is still progress. So
Absolutely.
keep going.
Yeah. And in every episode, I think we try to also talk about what happens when things don't go to plan, because it's all well and good to say, I'm going to sit in stillness and I'm going to think about why all of this, and I'm going to declutter one drawer at a time. And then what happens when it doesn't? So I think just knowing going in that overwhelm is going to happen, probably at some point, if you have enough clutter. Emotions will probably come up and life will probably interrupt the process. So thinking about knowing that going in and planning a reset with grace, with kindness, that reconnecting to your goal of more ease, more peace, a more nurturing, nourishing space to live, more space to live in, less time and energy devoted to taking care of stuff, reconnecting to that purpose can be helpful when nothing goes to plan. And then resetting with the next tiniest step, the smallest thing that you can do, whether it's clearing a counter. I did that yesterday. My kitchen island was full of stuff, and I thought, this is driving me crazy. This is like, you know, it was mentally overwhelming to see all of the things out in the middle. And so I cleared that surface. It took me 5 minutes and I felt better. Not that everything always has to be pristine. If that's the case, there's a whole other thing to think about, right? But just that clearing that counter helps to feel better, if that makes sense. So, one surface, one object, one thought reframed, one idea of, oh, I'm aware of this now, right? One piece of awareness. And if nothing goes to plan, or if things don't go the way that you wanted them to, that's okay. That's resilience building. We start again, we reset, we take a tiny step, and then we keep going.
And I think for my tiniest next step, mine's going to be thinking for a second about how good it feels to have done the thing.
Hmm.
So I will project to a place where I go, oh, right, I feel energized. I feel productive. I
Hmm.
feel good after I have cleaned out something. I
Yeah,
feel lighter. I feel freer. I feel like I have more choices.
yeah.
Um, so I'm going to try and think of the end,
Mm,
and that will help me to start the timer for 10 minutes. Because I think that's really the strategy for me, is because I don't know how long that one drawer will take, but I do know that I have 10 minutes right now. I
hmm.
don't, and what happens if I can finish more than that one corner in 10 minutes, but I have 10
Yeah,
minutes? So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes, and I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to think to myself how good it's going to feel when have completed that.
yeah. I love that. I think for my tiniest next step, it doesn't feel so tiny, but I think it's necessary. So, when we are finding homes for all of the things that we brought from our old home, it's a different style of home, it's a different type of location. I think what I'm going to do is try to incorporate, does this fit where we are now? Both where I am in this space, who personally where I am in this style of home in this location, and does it, like, did it serve its purpose already? Is it time to pass it along to somebody else who's going to enjoy it? There was a particular item I was trying to place this week, and I thought, you know what? I finally came to the realization that this doesn't belong in this home. It was fine for our old home, but it doesn't belong in this home, and that's okay. It can move on to somebody who's going to be so excited to get it,
Mhm.
you know? And that makes me feel good. It's easier to let go of when I know it's something that somebody's going to be really excited to be able to use. So,
So, clearing clutter creates cognitive space, mental health support, and emotional ease. And we encourage you to share your tiniest next step in the comments. And we really thank you for showing up because life is complicated. And having these human skills can make our life just a bit better, maybe even a lot better. So, thank you so much for listening with us today. Remember, you're not alone. We're figuring this out together, one step at a time.
keep showing up, keep making small steps. Small steps end up with big progress. And if you do like what you hear, click subscribe, leave comments. We'd love to hear what you're thinking, either your next tiniest step or another idea for another episode. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.